Hello friends, very enlightening greetings of this lovely day to all of you. I hope you all are celebrating your life with full zeal, positive spirits and great valor. So here I, Crtcl, am feeling immensely delighted to welcome you once again to this great economic forum, Crtcl Economic Academia. Dear friends, today we are basically going to have a very insightful discussion going through the major developments occurring in major aspects of the overall economic framework of our country. That is the analysis of the core economic parameters which are of vital importance, which basically tell us the real state of our economy. Where are we basically heading with regard to the international scenario, our relationships, the overall nature of our relationships with the major economies across the globe. How are the relationships of the Indian economy being defined in today's era with major economies across the globe? Like Sri Lanka and USA are the major economies with whom we are diversifying our relationships. So where are we actually heading, and where does this journey lead to enhancing of the overall aspects of India in order to maintain stability and peace with all the countries by achieving an optimum balance? Because, my dear friends, in an international arena, especially in today's times, which are quite sensitive, we need to act very, very diligently in a very, very wise manner in order to satisfy our neighboring countries, be it the developed countries or be it the developing countries across the globe, in order to maintain the cordial relationships with all these countries, with the main objective of the holistic development of the society. So today we are going to focus on the relationship India possesses with Sri Lanka and USA in today's times, and what are the prospects of this relationship in the near future. Moreover, dear friends, we are going to discuss the major insights being presented by our ever dynamic leaders. In today's discussion, we are focusing on the core mantras given by our respected Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji during the event Pariksha Pe Charcha, while addressing the students in the parliament. So basically on 27th January 2023, Shri Narendra Modi ji gave the set of 6 mantras to the students ahead of the exams. So first mantra is, shortcuts will cut you short. Secondly, those who cheat in exams will lose out in the long run in life. Thirdly, time management is very important for success. Next, engage in smart hard work. I hope all of you are quite familiar with the full form of SMART. if we talk about the SMART goals, it is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So engage in smart hard work. Next, make a realistic assessment of yourself. And sixth mantra is indulge in tech fasting for some hours every day. So these were some of the mantras Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji gave to the students in his Pariksha Pe Charcha interaction on Friday, that is 27th January 2023. Now, my dear friends, I am going to discuss or present the insightful write-up which Mr. Anil Agarwal, the leading pioneer, the leading industrialist of our country, presented for explaining the actual dynamics for the new India. What are the essential transformations required for a new India? So, as we proceed into 2023, the world is in the midst of many transformations. The most visible one, which makes headlines, is the energy transition as the countries move towards renewable energy and sustainable practices. A more silent but equally important revolution is actually happening in the digital transition. India is emerging as a leader in both these sectors. The potential for growth, new entrepreneurship, jobs via the supply chains that underlie the transformations is actually massive. I repeat, the potential for growth, new entrepreneurship, jobs via the supply chains that underlie the transformations is actually quite massive. We must drive forward with even more momentum and depth. The digital revolution has already brought with it big improvements in productivity and the way we work. In a country like India, it has actually proved to be a force for the inclusion of the previously marginalized groups into the economic mainstream. There is the ease of receiving government benefits without any siphoning off. There is the ease of making the payments to the families who may live at a distance. The farmers can get the latest information on weather and sowing on their mobile phones. The small businesses can access the marketplaces online and offline. And this is just the beginning, my dear friends. India has done remarkably well on the software side of the digital revolution. Our UPI, that is the Unified Payment Interface, is the world's best, as is our use of the Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile trinity. Now, we must become world beaters on the hardware side. An ever-expanding digital revolution actually requires a strong base in the electronics manufacturing value chain so that India does not become import dependent in this strategic sector. In recent years, a lot has been achieved in bringing the final assembly of electronics, the mobile phones, to India. The government must be complimented on its progressive policies, which have actually aided this. Now, the time is actually ripe to enter other parts of the value chain. The two most fundamental pillars of any electronics ecosystem are semiconductors and display glass. And practically, any electronic device you can think of, be it a mobile phone, TV, laptop, or car dashboard, all of these devices have the semiconductor as the brain and display glass as its body. No device can be actually made without both the elements, and only a handful of countries, actually 4, manufacture both semiconductors and display glass. So India is in the pole position to become the 5th after the government announced excellent policies for both sectors in December 2021, followed by an enlightened modification a few months ago. The Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has a great vision for the electronics ecosystem in India, and the policies reflect his ability to think big and long. So, if the states supplement the union government policies with appropriate incentives, there will be many interested investors. Certainly, I am inspired by the PM's vision and plan to set up both semiconductor and display fab units beginning this year. We must actually build a Silicon Valley in India, just like Indians played a big role in building a Silicon Valley in the United States of America. The energy transition in which we must succeed is actually going to be mineral intensive. A lot of focus is on the new age minerals like lithium, nickel, cobalt, and rare earths, which are actually crucial in the manufacturing of the batteries and other equipment. So that is a good thing. And India must strive to explore these minerals both in the country and overseas. But at the same time, the use of metals like copper and aluminium will also grow exponentially, as most of the hardware for the energy transition actually requires these metals in much larger quantities than earlier technologies did. India should not lose its potential and advantage in these metals. So, in the new year, we should actually focus our energies on working to cement our leadership in the emerging sectors of the global economy. While doing so, let us not forget that the transitions do not happen overnight, and that the old economy will actually continue to be important and provide opportunities for growth and employment. So take it oil and coal, for example, for the next decade. No country can marry the old and the new like India, whose civilization is actually ancient and modern at the same time. So this is really a wonderful write-up presented by Mr. Anil Agarwalji, very beautifully demonstrating that how the leading transformations are acting as the core elements for building the new India. So as the main highlight of his presentation is, the 4 countries manufacture both semiconductors and display glass. India is in pole position to become the 5th after the government announced excellent policies for both sectors in December 2021, followed by an enlightened modification a few months ago. This is the main highlight of his entire well-articulated write-up. Now, my dear friends, I would like to present the actual figure representing the key infra gap projects which are going to give a major push to the upcoming budget. The center will actually give a big push to the critical infrastructure gap projects that have been identified using the PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan in the upcoming budget. It may also provide additional funding support to states for executing these. The government officials said priority projects include rail, port, road, and other last mile infrastructure linkages for agriculture, food, steel, and coal sectors, among others. The railway lines that need to be doubled or roads that require widening over a short distance to free up the blockages are the kinds of projects that will actually receive priority attention, said a senior government official. The government has already identified 197 such critical infrastructure gap projects. So, these would get an additional allocation and focus under the Gati Shakti, a senior government official told Economic Times. The bottlenecks that slow down the movement of goods will be targeted majorly. Launched in October 2021, the PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan for the multimodal connectivity is actually a digital platform that brings together 16 ministries, including railways and roadways, for integrated planning and coordinated implementation of infrastructure connectivity projects. Most of these projects would actually fall under the economic corridors which have been identified. These will be East Coast Economic Corridor, Delhi to Mumbai, or Bangalore to Chennai, said Mr. Arindam Guha, partner, Government and Public Services, Deloitte, India. So, according to Mr. Guha, about half the 7.5 crore rupees capital expenditure budget for the financial year 2023 has been spent by the middle of the fiscal year. While the center has been investing, some part of the expenditure needs to be made by the states for the last mile road connectivity and urban infrastructure. That's one issue that needs to be addressed, and we are hoping that the scheme for the financial assistance to the states for the capital investment gets continued with a slightly higher allocation, said the official cited above. The financial year 2023 budget provided a 1.07 lakh crore rupees credit line to the states as a 50-year interest-free loan for the capital projects. Under this credit line, the capital expenditure of 77,109.66 crore rupees has been approved and 41,117.98 crore rupees released to the eligible states until December end. The center may actually carve out a certain portion of the special assistance scheme for the priority projects such as industrial parks where the state governments need to co-invest, Mr. Guha said. So now, my dear friends, after this great insightful discussion regarding the major budget push being given to the key infra gap projects, wherein we have learned the main highlight is that the center will give a big push to the critical infrastructure gap projects that have been identified using the PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan in the upcoming budget. It may also provide additional funding support to the states for executing these. Now, my dear friends, I would like to bring to your notice that India's Forex reserves touched a 6 months high, up by $1.727 billion. And now the economists explain why we have been able to attain such a high figure of the Forex reserves in our country in last 6 months. So, the Forex reserves of India touched an all-time high in the last 6 months for the week ending on January 20, 2023. The total Forex reserves stood at $5,73,727 million on January 20, shows the recent data released by the Reserve Bank of India on 27th January. In October 2021, the country's forex reserves touched an all-time high of $645 billion. The reserves actually rose mostly due to the appreciation of the non-dollar assets, that is, the assets denominated in yen or euro. Additionally, the rupee has stabilized around the 81.5 mark over the last couple of weeks, which resulted in lesser forex intervention to defend against the depreciating pressures on the rupee. So this is the main reason because of which our forex reserves have been able to touch the 6 months high. Now, my dear friends, we are going to move further in order to analyze the present picture of the relationship dynamics India is sharing with Sri Lanka. And obviously, these relationship dynamics have got enhanced after the recent visit of our External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar in Sri Lanka. So, India curbed the social fallout by acting fast with its neighborhood first policy, and the ties entered new phase with Dr. Jaishankar's visit, and this has been stated by the Lanka envoy. So, lauding India's financing assurances to the International Monetary Fund, backing Sri Lanka's debt restructuring efforts, Lankan High Commissioner Mr. Milinda Moragoda said the social fallout of the economic crisis in the strategically located island nation would have been worse if India had not acted swiftly, and that India's support will actually minimize any trust deficit between the two countries. Speaking to the Times of India, Mr. Moragoda said no other country would have helped Sri Lanka the way India did, and that Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar's recent visit to Colombo, his third in the past 12 months, marked the entry of the bilateral relationship into a new phase altogether. It also marked, he said, the beginning of Lanka's economic recovery. Dr. Jaishankar was in Colombo this month to express the solidarity with Sri Lanka, and he said during his visit, India's financing assurances to the International Monetary Fund were meant to clear the way for Sri Lanka to move forward, and in line also with India's expectation that all the bilateral creditors are dealt with equally. Sri Lanka is currently awaiting similar assurances from China and Japan as well, other major bilateral lenders, while Bdgt has written to Sri Lanka offering a debt moratorium for 2 years and support for securing the IMF's proposed $2.9 billion bailout package. The reports from Colombo suggest that it's not clear if the international lender, unlike in the case with India, is satisfied with China's assurances. So, my dear friends, this is really a very, very significant developmental approach towards enhancing our relationship dynamics with our neighboring countries. And obviously, I would like to state that India is actually playing the role of an angel for the global economy as a whole. The timing was actually very important. India's support overall and the fact that it took the lead can actually be hailed as an example of India's neighborhood first policy. There would have been more social fallout of the crisis otherwise, said Mr. Moragoda, adding that India's assurances are also in keeping with the requirements of Paris Club creditor nations, which are helping Sri Lanka with debt restructuring. The protesters last year swarmed the residence of the then President Gotabaya Rajapaksa following acute food and fuel shortages in the country that actually resulted from Lanka's debt crisis, leading finally to the exit of Rajapaksa from power. Mr. Moragoda said Sri Lanka is actually looking to attract more investments from India through cooperation in areas like renewables, power grid connectivity, refineries, tourism, trade expansion, and proposed divestments in telecom and insurance companies. The plans to turn Crtcl into a petroleum hub and use rupee for trade settlement are also under consideration. As we have been discussing in our preceding sessions as well, that is the discussions which are going on at an international level with major economies across the globe, especially with the neighboring countries of India, to actually conduct the bilateral trade in the domestic currencies. Dr. S. Jaishankar had said in Colombo that India will actually encourage investments in core areas like energy, infrastructure, and tourism. Significantly, Mr. Moragoda said India's support will help address the trust deficit between the two countries, which has often been exacerbated by China's ever-increasing footprints. We went through some rough patches, but what's important is that we kept the communication going. We were frank and candid. There will be ups and downs, but what India did for us, no other country would have done, said the High Commissioner. India was actually the first country to provide financing assurances to the International Monetary Fund as it sought proactive action by all creditors to help the nation of 22 million people. So, India and Sri Lanka are actually working to finalize the dates for a visit by the President Ranil Wickremesinghe soon. Dr. Jaishankar had delivered an invite to the President of Sri Lanka when he called on him during his visit. On Dr. Jaishankar's call for implementation of the 13th Amendment, which actually seeks devolution of power to the Tamil minority and early conduct of the provincial elections, Mr. Moragoda said Wickremesinghe had been working to bring all parties together from the day he was sworn in. It's actually complex in Sri Lanka. It's quite difficult to speak in terms of timelines, but the president is actually trying. This issue has been on the table for 75 years, and the 13th Amendment has actually served as the basic framework for settlement. Right now, Sri Lanka is faced with a bigger crisis, an existential one, and it's actually important everybody gets together, he said. Now, my dear friends, after this great strategic discussion, very beautifully describing the current dynamics of the relationship between India and Sri Lanka, I would like to move forward discussing that how USA, that is the United States of America, is actually wishing to approach the Indian economy, requesting it to find alternatives to the Russian military equipment. That is, the overall efforts are basically centered around the main aspect of helping India to diversify away from Russia. That is, to reduce its dependence on Russia. That's what the United States of America is actually trying. So, the Biden admin tells the lawmakers that there is actually a need to help India find alternatives to Russian military equipment. So, ahead of her India visit for the Foreign Office consultations, Under-Secretary of State for Political Affairs Ms. Victoria Nuland has told the lawmakers that the United States of America needs to help India find alternatives to Russian military equipment, and that is part of the job we have to do. Ms. Nuland is actually traveling to India as part of a 4-nation trip including Nepal, Sri Lanka and Qatar from January 28 to February 3. I think Indians find themselves after 60 years of entanglement having to find alternatives, and that's part of the job we have to do, is help them with the alternatives. Ms. Nuland told the members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee during a congressional hearing on Russia. She was actually responding to a question from the Senator Jeff Merkley when she told the lawmakers that she is traveling to India. Merkley said, "I'm glad to hear that you are going to India. I would think that after the performance of the Russian weapons on the battlefield has been demonstrated, they might be somewhat less interested." India has faced the flack from US lawmakers, both Republicans and Democrats, for choosing to abstain from a United Nations vote to rebuke Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The US officials have also expressed concern over India's purchase of the S-400 missile systems by Russia. On my last trip to India, there was actually one of the first things we said, that look at how these weapons perform on the battlefield, Ms. Nuland said in response. Merkley said both India and South Africa, along with the Asian nations with whom the United States of America is actually having difficulty in getting to take a strong stand against Russia. I think it particularly bothers me with democracy in South Africa as the democracies, he said. With regard to South Africa and India, as you know, these countries have long-standing historic intervening with Russia, Ms. Nuland answered. We have been making the case regularly with them that these dependencies that they have created make them more vulnerable, and we will continue to do that. In the case of the oil price cap, as you know, which India was quite skeptical of, they are now major beneficiaries because the oil that they are buying from Russia is so much cheaper, she said. So, we are now working with them on ways to diversify away from Russian weapons. I will be in India next week talking about that, among other things. The South African situation is actually complex and is also tied to some of the politics inside South Africa, Ms. Nuland said. In October 2018, India signed a $5 billion deal with Russia to buy 5 units of the S-400 Triumph air defense missile systems to ramp up its air defense, despite a warning from the then Trump administration that going ahead with the contract may invite the US sanctions. So, despite strong objections from the United States of America and the threat of sanctions from the Biden administration, India has refused to make any changes in its decision and is actually going ahead with the purchase of the missile defense system. India pursues an independent foreign policy and its defense acquisitions are guided by its national security interests, the Ministry of External Affairs said in November 2021. India's appetite for the Russian oil has actually swelled ever since it started trading on discount as the West shunned it to punish Moscow for its invasion of Ukraine. The Indian government has been vehemently defending its oil trade with Russia, saying it has to source oil from where it is the cheapest. Russia has for the second month in a row remained India's top oil supplier in November, surpassing the traditional sellers Iraq and Saudi Arabia, according to the data from energy cargo tracker Vortexa. Russia, which actually made up for just 0.2% of all oil imported by India in the year to March 31, 2022, actually supplied 9,09,403 barrels per day of crude oil to India in the month of November. So, dear friends, we have basically seen that how is this development taking place, wherein the United States of America is actually trying to approach India along with three other nations, that is Nepal, Sri Lanka and South Africa, to basically convince them to reduce their dependence on Russia. And we have basically learned that ahead of her visit for the Foreign Office consultations under Secretary of State for Political Affairs, Ms. Victoria Nuland has told the lawmakers that the United States needs to help India find alternatives to Russian military equipment, and that is the part of the job we have to do. Ms. Nuland is traveling to India as part of the 4-nation trip, including Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Qatar from January 28 to February 3. Now, dear friends, we are moving forward to analyze that how the top United States of America advocacy group submits the budget wish list, and emphasizing on the fact that how they are seeking the overall rationalization of the tax system of an economy. So, in the pre-budget presentation to the Finance Ministry, the US-India Strategic and Partnership Forum, that is USISPF, raised the need for the Finance Minister, Dr. Nirmala Sitharaman, to simplify and rationalize India's direct and indirect taxation systems. The USISPF, that is the US-India Strategic and Partnership Forum, is basically an India-centric US strategic and business advocacy group. A simplification and rationalization will actually lift global investors' confidence and therefore lead to greater foreign direct investment, that is FDI, into the country. The USISPF said, adding that such a move would actually reiterate India's commitment to the global tax deal. The forum advocated for a stable and predictable tax environment, more improvements in the ease of doing business, rationalization of the cost of doing business, and rationalization of the tax rates and tariffs. I repeat, The forum basically advocated for a stable and predictable tax environment, more improvements in the ease of doing business, rationalization of the cost of doing business, and rationalization of the tax rates and tariffs, thereby helping to build a very conducive and consistent business environment in India with respect to the overall taxation system in an economy. So, rationalize the corporate tax rates for the foreign companies, it stated. This would bring parity in the tax rates for the foreign companies, including banks, it added. It may be noted here that the direct taxes, including the income tax, capital gains tax, or the securities transaction tax. The indirect taxes, on the other hand, include GST, customs duty, or VAT levied on all end consumers of any products or services. On the capital gains tax, US ISPF said the finance minister should actually look to harmonize holding periods and rates of different instruments. It also said the finance minister should actually extend the concessional tax regime to the foreign portfolio investment from investment in securities. Another significant point raised by the US ISPF entailed tax incentives to the specific sectors like renewable energy and R&D investment in the health sector. On indirect taxes, the forum pushed for the proper clarification on the customs duty exemptions provided to the oil and natural gas companies, reduction in the customs duty rates for X-ray machines from 10% to 7.5%, and providing the customs duty exemption on all items imported by the specified research and development units. Besides, it said the respected finance minister should actually roll back the customs duty hike on nutritional products. The forum's recommendations on the customs tariffs included addressing the ambiguities in the Customs Tariff Act on telecom products, an extension of the concessional customs duty to advanced biofuel projects, and strengthening the process on the ground with respect to trade facilitation schemes like Crtcl and faceless assessment. I repeat, as this is the main highlight regarding the recommendations given by the forum to the Finance Ministry of India. The forum's recommendation on customs tariff included addressing the ambiguities in the Customs Tariff Act on telecom products. Secondly, an extension of the concessional customs duty to the advanced biofuel projects, and strengthening the process on the ground with respect to trade facilitation schemes like Crtcl and faceless assessment. Now, my dear friends, we are basically going to analyze another major aspect, that is, the US venture capitalists basically hope India's budget 2023 supports growth, strengthens the startup ecosystem. This is their another very relevant and significant expectation with regard to the upcoming budget of the Indian economy. The US venture capital firms investing in India are actually expecting the Union Budget 2023 to support the growth and development of the startup ecosystem in the country, according to a top investor. The Union Finance Minister Dr. Nirmala Sitharaman is actually scheduled to table the Union Budget for the financial year 2023-24 before the Parliament on February 1. the venture capitalist community here in the United States of America is actually very, very excited given the large number of unicorns emerging out of India in recent years. So, according to Mr. Arun Kumar, managing partner of Celestia Capital, the venture capitalists want to capitalize on Indian talent and hence invest in them. So, as the US-based venture capital firm investing in India, we are keenly interested in the policies and the initiatives that will support the growth and development of the startup ecosystem in the country, Mr. Kumar told PTI. The signals and allocations in the budget that further the growth of the new ventures based on innovation and entrepreneurship would be particularly welcome, Mr. Kumar said. Mr. Kumar served as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Global Markets and Director General of the United States and Foreign Commercial Service, that is USFCS, during the Obama administration. Mr. Kumar said, "We are actually very eager to see in the budget the government's continued commitment to fostering a business-friendly environment that actually encourages the foreign investment and supports the growth of the new and emerging companies, including in the deep tech space." Furthermore, the geopolitical scenario and the pandemic induced the need to actually diversify the supply chain sources and present India with an opportunity to enhance its participation as a trusted node in the global value chains, he added. So, such an aspiration would actually call for the policies that actually make it easy and cost effective to both import and export in such a way that the efficiency of the supply chains can be enhanced, boosting the overall competitiveness of the Indian manufacturing domain, said Mr. Kumar, who also served as the chairman and the CEO of KPMG in India for a 5-year term that ended last February. According to Mr. Kumar, the growth of the manufacturing sector is already spawning attractive new opportunities both to make the products for domestic and global use and also to develop the technologies and solutions that enhance the manufacturing capabilities. So, we believe that with the right policies in place, India has the true potential to become the global leader in many technology sectors, and we are excited to be a part of that great journey, he said in a response to a question. So, my dear friends, after this great insightful discussion and the overall picture we get that what are the US venture capitalists hoping and expecting from India's upcoming Union Budget 2023 with regard to actually helping them to enhance their overall growth and strengthen the startup ecosystem in the country. So such an aspiration would actually call for the policies that make it easy and cost effective to both import and export in such a way that the efficiency of the supply chains can actually be enhanced, boosting the competitiveness of the Indian manufacturing domain, said Mr. Kumar, who also served as the chairman and CEO of KPMG in India for a 5-year term that ended last February. Now, my dear guys, we are now moving forward to basically have a strong overview and to have the core analysis of the overall scenario existing to maintain an optimum balance between the goals of the banking sector and the economic goals of the country. And in this regard, Dr. Shaktikant Das, the governor of the Reserve Bank of India, basically anticipates that the interest may remain high for long. As per him, the interest rates may remain high for a long time, even as the central banks around the world are beginning to pivot toward lower interest rate increases or even a pause amid the signs of peaking inflation. With some ebbing of the COVID-related restrictions and cooling of inflation in various countries, though still elevated, the central banks have actually started what appears to be a pivot towards lower rate hikes or pauses. Governor Dr. Shaktikant Das said at the annual conference of Fixed Income Money Market and Derivatives Association of India and the Primary Dealers Association of India. The high policy rates for a longer duration actually appear to be a distinct possibility going forward. This is actually probably the first signal from the central banker that the global factors are getting less tight for the first time in nearly a year, when inflation around the world forced various central banks to tighten the monetary conditions. So, while inflation still worries the developed part of the world, in India it appears to be tapering, though external spillovers remain a major threat. India's market participants will have to prepare themselves to actually manage the changes and risks associated with globally integrated markets. Greater challenges will emerge as the footprints of Indian banks increase in the offshore markets, the range of products expand, non-resident participation in domestic markets grows, and as the capital account convertibility increases. I repeat, India's market participants will have to prepare themselves to manage the changes and the risks associated with the globally integrated markets. Greater challenges will actually emerge as the footprints of Indian banks emerge in the offshore markets. The range of products expand, non-resident participation in the domestic markets grows, and as the capital account convertibility increases. He said, though India's inflation remains elevated, there has been a welcome softening during November and December 2022. India's retail inflation dropped to 5.88% in November from 6.77% in October 2022, falling below 6% for the first time in more than 3 quarters. It further fell to a 12-month low of 5.72%. So, on the growth front, the projections are now veering around to a softer recession as against a severe and more widespread recession projected a few months back. In this hostile and uncertain international environment, the Indian economy remains resilient, drawing enough strength from its macroeconomic fundamentals, Mr. Das said. So this is the major strength, the major USP of the Indian economy. That is the strength, the overall balance an excellent balance Indian economy has been able to attain in its core macroeconomic fundamentals. Dr. Das said, as deglobalization and protectionism are actually gaining ground around the world, it is actually necessary for India to build and strengthen the bilateral trade relations. The average current account deficit to GDP ratio stands at 3.3% during H1 2022-23. The slowing global demand is actually weighing on merchandise exports, but our exports of services and remittances remain strong. The net balance under the services and remittances remains in a large surplus, partly offsetting the trade deficit. Consequently, the current account deficit of the country is eminently manageable and within the parameters of viability, Dr. Das said. The governor also said that the rupee's volatility during the COVID-19 pandemic was actually less than the previous crisis, with the 1 month implied volatility touching 25% during the global financial crisis on October 10, 2008 and 20% during the taper tantrum period on August 29, 2013. So, my dear friends, in this exploratory discussion, we have been able to analyze the core insights presented by the respected governor of the Reserve Bank of India, Dr. Shaktikant Das, wherein he predicts that the interest may remain high for long in the Indian banking sector. And this is probably the first signal the central banker from the central banker that the global factors are actually getting less tight for the first time in nearly a year, when inflation around the world forced the central banks to tighten the monetary conditions. So while inflation still worries the developed part of the world, in India it appears to be tapering through the external spillovers, and this actually remains a major threat. So now, my dear friends, in this entire discussion, we have been able to understand the core dynamics of the Indian economy with regards to the current level of the Forex reserves, which is actually at the 6-month high level. Moreover, we have also learned that the interest rates is actually predicted to still remain high for some time, as predicted by the respected RBI Governor Dr. Shaktikant Das. Moreover, we have also been able to understand the overall international relationship dynamics India is having with its neighboring country, Sri Lanka, and how this relationship is getting much better, much stronger, because as I have been saying in my sessions, that a friend in need is a friend indeed. That is, we have been helping our neighboring nation ever since it is facing the major crisis. Moreover, the recent visit, that is the third visit of Dr. S. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister in the Sri Lankan economy, in last 1 year, his recent visit to Colombo has been very significant, in order to actually help Sri Lanka to get out from its major economic crisis situation, and helping its major strategic sectors to boost. Moreover, we have also discussed the core insights presented by Mr. Anil Agarwal, the leading pioneer, the leading industrialist of the country. wherein he has given his very useful points which need to be pondered upon, which very well define and explain why India is on a leapfrog mission. Yes, mind my words, I'm saying leapfrog mission. That is the quantum leap towards significant development, which would help to define New India with the help of the strategic transformations under the ever dynamic leadership and the well laid out, far-sighted, visionary decisions for strategic transformations. Moreover, we have also been able to understand what all expectations the United States of America is actually having from the upcoming budget of the Indian economy for the year 2023, which would actually favor the factors which would actually favor further investment of the US-based firms in the Indian economy, which are basically emphasizing on the overall consistent policy framework over the very conducive business environment which would enable the startup ecosystem to boom, thus helping them to actually start their manufacturing operations, to diversify their manufacturing operations in the Indian economy. Moreover, we have also been able to learn that that USA is also trying to approach India to convince it to actually diversify away its dependence from the Russian economy with regard to its dependence on oil and also the major defense equipments. And for that particular objective, one of the US-based US-based leader, Miss Nuland, is actually on the visit to India along with 3 other neighboring nations of India, that is Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Qatar, towards the attainment of this particular goal to actually convince these nations to actually reduce their dependence on Russia. And most importantly, the major highlight with which we began our today's discussion, that is yesterday, that is on 27th January 2023, our respected Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji addressed the students of the country in the parliament. Very significant lot of the students he addressed on the occasion of the basic meeting titled Pariksha Pe Charcha, giving them the core secrets on how to succeed not only in the forthcoming examinations but also how to succeed in life. And this defines the entire strength of the foundation on which the human capital of the country is based. So, my dear friends, I believe you must have found this session very resourceful and productive, helping you to enhance and embrace your knowledge set with very enlightening insights. So, on this note, I would like to conclude my today's session, and I hope you all take an excellent care of yourselves until we meet next. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.